Jaz, thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Firstly, I'd like to go and talk about anxiety and the different phases of anxiety people go through, especially looking at um, the pandemic and how people have suffered different bouts of it. Some extreme, but not so, but then other times not so extreme. So, could you sort of give some advice and some sort of clarity on what anxiety is and how people can
Right.
control it.
Yeah, of course. Well, if you technically looked under the dictionary, anxiety is actually an apprehension about an upcoming event. It's usually an emotional response to perceived dangers that aren't necessarily always real. And years and years ago, anxiety would be we'd be running away from tigers in woods and stuff like that. But at the moment, we're not doing that. But I think a lot of people are just always in this heightened state of anxiety, that sort of fear and apprehension. And I know for a lot of people, COVID has brought these feelings to surface, really, because we've never encountered such a virus.
Right.
It's also, you can't see it, so
Mm.
it's not like, oh, you can see a tiger and you run.
No.
um, but with a virus, it's silent, and there has been so much media um, coverage about it, that that's all we've heard and seen for the last year, really. So people are, genuinely concerned, really.
Mm.
Um, but, that there are things that you can do. But, now the vaccine's here, so I imagine people's anxieties are slightly less heightened.
Do you think, a lot, I know I definitely have stopped watching the news. I've definitely taken my own steps.
Yeah.
Um, do, you- do you think, not that it's in people's head as such, but it's fueled? It's fueled by a lot of our environment. It's fueled by the people around us. Um,
Absolutely. Because, for a whole year, that's all we've been listening to and watching. It became, when it first came out, it was very addictive.
mm,
And, in our household, my husband would constantly read the paper, and this person has said that, and, oh, you got to listen to it. And I just said, right, enough. We're not going to listen to any news, and we're not going to look at newspapers anymore, because um, I mean, for me, I never got that anxious about it, because I'm a person that likes to look at, look at the research.
mm,
So what I did was find out about viruses, um, and yes, so for me, it's always about getting the facts. If you have facts, then you are more, well, you're less likely to feel anxious about things, you know, not just COVID, but anything, if you've got an upcoming interview, or
yeah,
you're anxious about an exam, that there are things to do, like, well, one, study.
yeah.
There'll always be some sort of anxiety, but if you feel well prepared, you can kind of counteract stuff, really, like those feelings. And that's what I find, anyway.
I think as well, what I found with anxiety is there's this, it's still quite stigmatized, I think. I mean, the experience I had with anxiety was like getting on a train.
Yeah.
I was really fearful of
Mm.
having an attack and people staring at me and being quite embarrassed, because I didn't feel it was a subject. I thought they were going to just think I was crazy, and I still don't think it was a subject that I felt comfortable, sort of when I was feeling my worst, and I've really suffered
Yeah.
panic as well. That what my friends used to say, just speak to the person next to you, just like kind of whisper and tell them what you're going through. And I never did. And I think that sort of heightened it. The fact that I think it's still, although people are still talking about it quite openly within social media, I still think it's kind of stigmatized within households.
Yeah, no, I agree. And especially with sort of South Asian households, there are illnesses and mental health is just not talked about, which just adds to the anxiety because you feel like you can't talk about it because, well, it's just a stigma, isn't there? There's a stigma about it. I know 12 years ago I had cancer, bowel cancer. And I remember phoning my mum up. And, the first thing she was like, oh no, where did you get that from? It doesn't run in my side of the family. It's almost like it's got nothing to do with me or any part of my, my family. And, a lot of people in my family did not know that I had cancer because my mum just didn't want to talk about it, didn't feel that maybe it was because it's looked badly upon that your daughter's got cancer. And
Do you think people would judge? Like, from your experience and how you've overheard people talk about other people,
yeah,
do you think people would be quite negative and judgmental about it?
I think so. I think there's I think with Asian culture there's a real thing about blame as well. Sort of they look at you like, oh, you've done something to get that.
Yeah.
It they don't see it as like there's actually something wrong with you. They think, well, there's something wrong with you because you must have done this or you must have done that, or they always have to have a reason why it happened, and that reason is because you've done something.
Yeah.
I do feel that it's like that. And the same with sort of mental health. They kind of, family kind of laugh off someone that may be, struggling with mental health issues. They'll kind of dismiss them or just say, oh, well, she's always been like that, or, you just have to ignore her, or
Yeah.
it's that you can't really talk about it. Wouldn't it be lovely that you could just sit down and have an honest conversation and just say, look, mum, or look, look, auntie, I'm feeling this way. I just don't know what to do about it. You'll always get dismissed. It's like, oh, it's just in your head, or, oh, you'll be fine. You just drink some, Barney, or drink some tea, and everything will just be fine. It'll go away. But maybe it's because they don't know what to do. It's the fear for them as well. There's that anxiety about like, oh shit, my daughter or my son's got. They're coming to me and I don't know what to do. It's like, well, we won't talk about it. Maybe it'll just go away.
Yeah. And that's I think a very that's a very generational cycle as well, isn't it? Like I not that I am quite, I do try and keep an open mind with things like this. And I do feel in a lot of cases that elders before us weren't exposed to having these conversations. They weren't brought up to have these conversations. Therefore, it's not within their blueprint to be able to talk about these things. And there's something like, as well, I was talking to my friend, but I don't think I was, because my heritage is Punjabi, so my mother tongue is Punjabi. So for me, there's not a word for depression, for example. Within Punjabi, it's like Dimag Kharabia. Like it's like you're broken, rather. Yeah, you're like, and the language that I think they use on each other, because it's not within the Punjabi language, I think it's very difficult as well. And it's sort of trying to explain that to elders is really difficult because they just don't understand it. They just, they think and behave a certain way. Do you think that's a lot to do with it?
Yeah, I think so. And I think also that as if anyone did have these issues, like parents and stuff like that, they just had to get on with life and you didn't go to the doctor because the mark was crab. You you had to have a tangible disease or something that someone can see. So if it's in your head, you can't see it. So
Yeah.
therefore, there is nothing wrong with you as such because it's not seen.
Yeah.
Uh, Whereas if you've got a cut, you've broken your arm or something like that, you can see what's gone on. So
Yeah.
therefore, they believe you. It's almost like, yeah, there's no grasp of,
Mm.
as you said, because there's no word for it. It's almost like they can't grasp that it is real. It's a real thing that's happening. Um,
Do you think things
and
are changing?
I think so with the younger generation, and maybe the older ones try to understand it, but they can't because that's just not something that they've encountered themselves. Um,
Yeah.
Maybe years and years ago, if someone was mad, they put them in a home or whatever. I don't really know. I don't know what they
Yeah.
do or hide away that person. And
I think what you said about blame, I think like people were more likely to call a doctor to say, fix her,
yeah,
him, rather than actually sit down with their children and have a conversation and go, what's wrong? Are you okay? And
yes.
for some reason, um, that was maybe harder for parents, or maybe they didn't even think that was an option. I don't know.
No, that's true, because if there was any growing up, I'm Punjabi as well. So growing up, I was brought up in a new town. So a lot of my friends were, Gore, white, and I didn't have much contact with Indian people, and so I used to struggle with the fact that I am Asian, I look different, but also all my friends are white, and so quite often my parents would be like, oh, go, you shouldn't be hanging out with white people all the time. But it was like, well, there are no
No.
there are no other people to hang out with. So sometimes I think they kind of thought that there was something wrong with
Yeah.
me because that's all I knew.
I think they lack accountability.
Well, I don't. For parents, I think that they feel like they've got nothing to do with. They want to control you, but they feel like they've got nothing to account for. As if there's something wrong with you, it's because there's something wrong with you. It's
Yeah.
not because they've contributed
Right.
to that. It's actually just like, well, you're the problem, so we should try and get you fixed.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how, but that it isn't themselves that they think that they need to fix themselves. They think that it's you. Oh, what have I done? Why have I got a daughter like this? And it's
Yeah, but
like,
there is
well,
an emotional blackmail there, isn't there? What have I done? I've put a roof over your head, and
yeah,
I've definitely heard that one. I put a roof over your head. You eat, and I'm like, but that's the role of parents, right? That's the
yeah,
role of motherhood. That's the role of fatherhood.
yeah,
That's. Am I now indebted to that? Am I now indebted to you
right.
because
Yes, I think you
you
are.
fed me?
No, it's very true. And I understand it's a different generation and that they do the best that they can, but they also have to accept that there is some sort of responsibility with having children, and if they do suffer with anything, anxiety or anything that's going on with them, that they must try and help them, or try to understand that it's not just them, that they have a part to play in this.
Mm.
you know you can't complain that I don't hang out with brown, Asian people when you take me to a new town and it's got nothing to do with me. If I was in Southall, I would have, Asian friends. Um,
And do you think as well, when you talk about anxiety and you talk about mental health, um, do you think as well that I've read books and I've read up on how you can inherit mental health. So some of the traumas that they face, maybe they don't see it as trauma. Maybe it was just that's how things were growing up in childhood. It was hard. But actually, some of the traumas that they face that in turn are reflected on their children, because obviously there's traumas that haven't been healed from parents.
yeah, no, I think that's very true. There are traumas, and there are, genetic. There is part of genetic makeup that, depression or mental health does run in families. It's true, but it's all down to genes, and genes are, they can be changed with diet and lifestyle. You don't have to just keep continuing a life, this sort of sentence that people think, oh, well, my mom was like that, so that means I'm like that. You don't have to follow that same path. You can do things about it. You can become a bit more self-aware that, yes, I have this issue. you know Generally most South Asians have the issue of diabetes, but if you know that's in your genetic makeup, then do something about it. Don't eat so many sweet things. Don't eat pakora and samosas, and just be a bit
Jalebi.
more, just yeah, jalebi, yes, just be a bit more mindful about things that you can do, and therefore you won't get it. So you can't just say, well, my mum was like that or my dad had that, and therefore like it's some sort of label or brand that you've got to carry on for the rest of your life. It doesn't have to be like that at all.
And
uh,
how do you think people could help, like their parents or elders as well, to explain this? Because I think it's like, I understand what you're saying, like, just don't do it, but it's really hard to try and explain to someone that has for so many years um, have these habits, and to unlearn those habits,
mm,
and to try and highlight the risks. I
yeah.
think it's really hard, especially there's a real stubbornness, I think, to the elder generation as well.
Yeah, I think if you're having those sort of issues, I think you always have to address it as me, I, rather than just say, oh, you did this and you make me feel like this, or if you didn't do that, then I wouldn't feel like this. You have to own your own feelings. So just say, look, mum, or look, dad, I'm struggling. I'm really struggling. I'm feeling like this. Um, you know, and I just wanted to let you know that, sometimes you say I behave in such a way, it's because I feel like this. And I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying that this is, these are my feelings. And I'd prefer you not to dismiss them, because it upsets me when you do that. So, maybe it's just about having a very open conversation, but just talk about yourself, because instantly your parents hopefully won't get, they won't get defensive. So, but, everyone knows their own parents, and that their limits and what they will listen to.
Yeah.
And maybe they won't understand what you're saying. Maybe they won't even hear you, but maybe they are listening, and maybe they will sort of step back and just be a bit kinder and
Mm.
be a bit more understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, because they are unhealed, aren't they? They're people
Yeah.
that are unhealed. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. And, our generation, we've done a lot of work, the amount of counselling I've had, and the amount of, now I'm training to be a counsellor, so we learn how to help ourselves. We learn how to heal ourselves. But that generation, they'd never go to a psychiatrist, or a therapist of some sort. They won't, because they don't think they're broken.
Yeah.
They don't think that there's something wrong. Ideally for them, it's to blame
Yeah.
someone else, really.
I
It's
think as
everyone
well.
else's fault.
Yeah. And I think it's quite scary to open that box as well, isn't it?
Oh,
To
God.
really open that box, because I think from my experience of some people around me,
Mm,
I think they're more fearful of what could come out,
mm,
to actually break down, to actually lose that control
yeah.
that they've sort of kept zipped up. And I think as well, some people would rather keep that shut rather
Yeah.
than,
But it takes someone very brave to show how vulnerable they're
yeah,
feeling, and if you show your vulnerability to someone and then it gets dismissed, you just go back even more into yourself and actually start believing that there is everything is it just makes you feel more and more depressed, I think, really, because you just become more and more inward because nobody understands, nobody listens, nobody, you're not going to someone to get fixed, you're just going to someone because you just can't carry what's inside you,
mm,
on your own, because it's a difficult thing.
yeah,
um, and and so, within the family, it's sad if you can't go to, your brothers, your sisters, or your parents, and talk about this sort of stuff, and that you end up just seeing everyone else and talking to other people.
yeah. I
But there
think,
should be more openness. I do feel that, in Asian society, there's so many secrets and so many
yeah.
things. You can't talk about this, and why can't we talk about it? Why can't we just talk about it?
And why are they a secret?
Yes,
Well, that
exactly.
means somebody shouldn't be doing something that they have been doing, And
Yeah.
it's you're right, and I've definitely experienced secrets, still do, for members of my family in particular.
Yeah.
And I find that the burden as well, the psychological impacts of holding other people's secrets
Mm.
and holding people's lies,
Yeah.
especially from a young age.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've really felt that impact because I've gone massively the other way. I I do not lie. I'm not going to say I haven't lied,
I know.
but very much since I've become a mother, I do not lie. I'm very much, we don't have secrets in this family, especially when she's sort of sometimes being playful, my daughter, and going, don't tell daddy. I do, like, I make a point, I go, I don't keep secrets from daddy.
Yeah.
I have to tell him.
Yeah.
Um, but if you tell me, then I can tell him, right? Like, so do it that way. But there is, right, there is a real psychological and emotional impact
Mm.
from lies and secrets that
Yeah.
aren't even yours.
No.
They're other people's.
Yeah.
And especially from childhood,
Mm.
being brought up, being taught to lie,
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
found that very heavy to
Yeah.
carry.
Well, it is. It's quite a burden, especially for a child, to be put in that position where you're having to lie. And sometimes you don't even realize it's a lie, but it's just like, oh, you can't talk about something, and you don't actually understand why. So there's so much silence sometimes, and that silence is unbearable because it's what tears families apart, I think, because if you're always living a lie where you can't talk about things, or we can't talk about that, there's always this elephant in the room that we mustn't discuss, but it's there, it's such a sort of heavy presence, isn't there, that you
Mm.
just think, my God, I don't want to be in that presence anymore. I just want to hang out with people that we can talk about how our feelings are and everything else, and we're not going to be judged. when, we're not going to be blamed or judged or anything. We can just talk freely and be accepted, and this is who we are, and
Yeah.
just can't do that in certain families. I'm not saying every family is like that, but I do know that I seem to encounter it quite a lot in quite a lot of Asian
Talk
families.
about it, people go, yeah, like, that happened in our family. There was, like, when I talk about this sort of subject about lying and the impact that it has on your mental health, um and people start going, yeah, like, this person was an alcoholic, this person was gay, like, like all these, and I'm like, gosh, and particularly for children to have to carry that,
Mm.
because what I found was the hypocrisy on it as well. The
Yeah,
fact that people gossip about other people,
yeah,
and the people were sort of had this sort of persona of being very advisory, that the advisory, that the good, and the quite sweet person, but actually, in fact, what that person was giving advice for was doing exactly the same, but
yeah,
just very secretly and for a very, very, very long time as well.
yeah.
Um,
It's,
that's what I found within communities and families, that there's a lot of hypocrisy
yeah,
around issues that aren't talked about.
yeah, no, definitely. And I know of people that do things, and I'm just like, well, why does nobody pull them up on that?
Yeah,
Why doesn't actually anyone confront them and just say, hey, well, why are you doing this? And you all talk about it, and after a while, it just gets like, oh God, I don't want to listen to them just moaning about someone. If you're not going to do anything about it, then you either don't see that person or you confront them. You don't just say that person does this all the time. No, 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 no.
mm.
You know,
Because people aren't holding that person responsible and
Mm,
saying, really step back and look at what you've done.
yeah,
Um, I think, I think this is where we see a lot of parents and families starting to break now, because generation before, you were treated quite badly by your mother-in-law. That was quite a stereotype sort of character, especially when it's reflected in films as well. um, you were sort of accepting of your role, and how how you were treated.
yeah,
But I think what's happening now is, especially first generation British Asians, they're starting, because they're around quite a diverse community when it
mm,
comes to different ethnicities and different religions, for example, as well. They're starting to break away
yeah,
from that pattern,
yeah,
and to end that cycle, unfortunately, you do have to walk away from your family. You do have to take that step away, because if you stay around it, your children will be affected by those lies, those secrets that are still going on,
yeah, yeah,
and they will be part of that burden.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree. And also education. Parents are very up for you to become educated and stuff, and with education comes power. Power in the sense that you take control of your own life. Before, it's always your parents sort of almost controlling you. Like, you have to do this and you have to marry that person and da 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 and whatever. And then when you do educate yourself, you just think, well, actually, I don't have to be part of this. I don't want to be controlled. I'm my own person. So, when you do get an arranged marriage and stuff, and you're working and bringing in your own money, why am I still being controlled? And
Yeah. Do you think there's an element of, because it happened to, say, for example, our parents, there's an element of those parents enjoying the control that they have with their children, because they never had it.
I don't know whether I would say it's enjoying the control. I think they just think that's their role is to control. Um, it's almost like you don't have children because you want to have children or you
Yeah.
love children. It's almost like they're a commodity, or they're there. they just see them as an extension of themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And therefore we are just extensions of our parents, and therefore they can control us because we aren't our own people.
Mm,
That's how I kind of
yeah.
see it, really. So I don't think there's any malice. I think that that's just how, that's how they think they are showing maybe love as well. You know, my parents, you know, I married someone that was English, and when I told them, oh, well, he wasn't even English, he's half Chinese and half English. So, you know, there was a great uproar about that one, that I couldn't even pick someone that was
Yeah.
just one, you know. And the, you know, when I told them that I love this person, they just could not grasp what love is, because they didn't marry for love.
No.
and and for them it's yeah, like, yes, it's just alien to them, really.
No.
And they think that, well, if we choose someone for you, therefore we can control how your life's going to be. You're going to be much happier because, you know, so and so is a doctor, or so and so earns this much money, or so and so is from this caste, even though they say they don't do caste. You know, there
Well,
is still some of that going on
yeah,
deep down.
absolutely.
um, you know, and then they feel like, shit, she's marrying who she wants to marry, I'm losing control of
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
You know, and they kind of don't understand that, really. I didn't, you know, they didn't feel like they brought me up to go and make my own decisions and marry someone and do art. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, I can imagine that. And you know, when you talk about sort of attitudes, family attitudes, and you were saying that, you know, you had cancer,
mm,
and there was a sort of an attitude of, um, you know, how did that happen, and who did you get that from,
mm,
sort of concept. How how did you how did you get over that struggle of firstly accepting the fact that you'd received this news, going to a
mm.
family, receiving not so supportive news.
It was really difficult. You know, I think I still struggle with it. You know, sometimes when I say that and see people's faces, they're almost like, "Whoa, okay." But yeah, that I did struggle with that. But on one hand, it made me realise that actually, you know, my health is mine. It's mine. I can do what I want because I got it. You know, this is my cancer, and so therefore, I felt almost that I didn't have to make decisions based on my mum's opinion, really, of what I was going to do and stuff. You know, um, when I was diagnosed, I got into nutrition at that time, and I had to have, well, basically, I had the cancer. They cut out the tumor, and they said, "Oh, great, you're fine. It didn't spread. Da, 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 off you go." And then 3 months later, they said that, "Oh, we're really sorry, but it's metastasized to your liver." And then they wanted to start chemo, which I did for about 3 months. But that's when I started to investigate nutrition and lifestyles. I started to eat very healthy, even though I thought I ate very healthily. You know, using stuff to sort of target tumours and cancer. I got into meditation. I did counselling because I felt, whilst I'm not to blame for getting the cancer, I thought it was a way that my body is trying to tell me there is something wrong with you. Why did you get this? I
Mhm.
have to deal with the underlying issue. You know, Western medicine is great for treating the symptoms. So they cut out the tumor. And that's why I didn't really want to do the chemo. I had the operation, removed the sort of third of my liver, but the liver's great because it regenerates.
Mhm.
And then afterwards, I thought, you know what? I don't want to do this chemo. I don't want to poison my body. It's archaic. I thought it is just like so brutal. So I did a lot of research. I did loads and loads hours, hundreds and hundreds of hours of research about chemo and whether it would prolong my life. And I came to the conclusion, if the chemo would prolong my life, if I took it for 3 months, it would prolong my life for 3 months. And that's how I saw it anyway. And I thought, you know what, it's miserable. I don't want to do this. So I just said to the oncologist, I'm not going to continue with this. And they said that, well, you'll die. And I said, okay, fine. And, but because I felt like this is my body. If I choose not to do something that I don't think is good for my body, then it's my privilege. So I didn't tell anyone. I only told my husband and my daughter that, I don't want to go ahead with it. And they were really supportive. And that was 12 years ago, and here I am. So
That's lovely. But when I hear that, and I think, putting myself in that situation, obviously it's that's quite a brave thing to do. I'm not sure a lot of people would take that risk and make the step of actually just choosing nutrition over something that's been used every single day, and being told by professionals that it works.
Yeah. I mean, now I'm a nutritional therapist, and I would never tell anybody that do not take the chemo. That's everyone's choice, just as anything that people want to do, it's their choice. But all I want to do is make sure that, for myself, it was an informed choice. It wasn't like, I'm not going to take it anymore. As I said, I did lots of research, and I did do other things that I felt was going to help. And sometimes, that placebo effect, that your mind is so powerful. Your mind can, heal you. I'm convinced it can heal you, really. If you tell yourself you're going to get better, then I do believe you will get better. If you curl up in the hospital bed and just say, well, I'm going to die, then you've got no will, have you? You've got no incentive. You're not telling yourself that things are great. It's always, you can always look at things in two different ways. You can always think your glass is half full or half empty, and I'm always a glass is half full type of person.
Yeah. And what did you do? What were the steps that you made? Like you said, you're talking about nutrition. What did you change? What did you change how did you change your lifestyle?
Well, fundamentally, I think, the thing that caused me to cancer, because everyone has cancer, but there's always something in your life that something happens, and, that sort of, the sort of cancer cells proliferate. And I felt, for me, it was stress. My dad had passed away, someone else had passed away. I was struggling with sort of family stuff, and and so for me, I felt that I need to address the stress side, the mental side of stuff, because I thought, if I don't sort out what's going on my head and what I'm telling myself and what I'm allowing myself to constantly do, then I will never get my body to do what it wants to do. So I couldn't just chuck nutrition at it and then still think the same way as I did. So I had to do both at the same time. So that's why I thought it was really important to do the counselling, the meditation. I got into, my aunt's a Kundalini yoga teacher, so I got into Kundalini yoga. I bought an infrared sauna. I'd go upstairs and, do this healing Kundalini chant for like 15 minutes every day. And, did a lot of juicing. So it's good because, your appetite isn't that great. So that's a good way to just get lots of vitamins and stuff, is just by juicing. And
the Gleason juices, because obviously that's a very famous doctor that stated that actually he could cure some cancers, or all cancer, I think. through nutrition, and to actually put back in our bodies what it's missing.
Yeah, yes, yeah, definitely. But I don't think, I would ever use the words cure. I think you can support yourself with most illnesses, but you can't cure.
Do you believe you can cure cancer?
I don't, when I started to train as a nutritional therapist, we can never use the word cure. I don't think doctors can use the word cure. We can only support. So, I can support anyone with whatever they're going through. And, with menopause or anything, even anxiety, you can support people, but you can't cure them. And I think everyone, to a degree, has the power to heal themselves. You know, yeah, I mean, it's a very difficult one, really. But I would never use cure.
Okay.
Definitely not.
And you've come out the other side 12 years now, and
Yeah.
the cancer has gone
Yes. Yes.
completely.
Completely.
Wow.
Yes.
So
And I think it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I wouldn't have started to do nutrition. I wouldn't have started to address all the stuff in my life. So now I no longer want all these dramas and stuff. I just walk away. I'm just like, do you know what? I'm really not interested. If you want that in your life, you can. And I started to put myself first. I think it's really important that we all look after ourselves, because if we can't look after ourselves, we can't look after other people. And so there's always this guilt thing about, oh, I can't say no to people, or I can't say no to family. I can't say no to anything. And being Indian, we're Indian women, we're taught to be subservient almost to a degree, aren't we? We're there for everyone apart from ourselves. So I started putting myself first. I started saying no a lot more. I stopped my partying days, and I still drink wine. I still have, a glass of wine. Not every night, but I love a glass of wine, and I love cooking, and sort of being healthy doesn't mean it's boring, bland food. To a degree, Asian food is so healthy. All the garlic and the haldi, and that it's actually really good. And in the olden times, your grandmothers were probably really right in giving you like sund or fennel, lots of stuff that helps helps your body, and digestion and headaches, and you name it. That everyone has this on hand. Turmeric is one of the best things for a lot of stuff. Inflammation, it's just great for reducing inflammation. And people taking lots of statins and stuff, you can reduce, you can lower your blood pressure. You can do lots of stuff with nutrition. There are lots of things. You can thin your blood with cod liver oil, fish oils. You don't have to take, blood thinners for the rest of your life, an aspirin or something. So there are plenty of things you can do.
I think it kind of sounds like when you were talking about what you did, like the changes that you made, it's kind of like appreciating your body and starting to give back to your body what it's given you, and kind of loving yourself again. I think because when you love yourself, you have a lot of self-respect for yourself and a lot of appreciation of what you've gone through. But when you talk about taking care of yourself again, that's how it sounds. It's actually sounds really nice.
Yeah,
a lot of people should do that more.
Well, no, definitely. But we're all so busy sometimes, aren't we, looking after everyone else, and we never put ourselves first. And I do that now. From the moment I used to go in my sauna for 15 minutes, that was my time. Nobody could disturb me. So even if it's 15 minutes, and things like meditation, you know, it's shown to really alter your brain waves, and it can help quite a lot with anxiety and stuff. So, you know, just listen to 15 minutes of meditation at night time and go to bed. And sleep is so important, you know, constantly not having enough sleep, it really does affect your whole body and your being. You know, you can't make decisions. You know, we all know 1 or 2 nights of broken sleep, it's like, well, you can't make it. You know, you're just like a zombie, really, aren't you? So it's very difficult, really. So yeah, everyone should start, and you know, everyone should just declutter their life, really, or declutter their brain. You know, we don't like mess around us, so why do we have so much stuff going on in our head? Why can't we just stop doing that? So,
How
you know,
do you stop that? How do you sort of tell yourself to, you know, it's again, it's all about sort of unlearning habits, isn't it? Or the
yeah,
habits that we've been, well, one we've inherited, that
yeah,
we've been sort of like sort of grown up to sort of be like
yeah,
and to do, and then you've,
yeah.
you know, and now we're sort of saying, well, actually, we've got to unlearn all that.
Yeah.
What's the first step, do you think?
Well, breathing's quite good. Simple, you know, like box breathing, where you just inhale for 4, hold that breath for 4, and then exhale for 4 and hold it
Yeah.
again.
So
And
I do that with my anxiety.
yes, yeah. So, you know, breathing is just great for that. It's great. And, you know, I know it's so easy for me to just say, oh, well, you know, we shouldn't have so much thoughts going on in our head, but breathing can help with that, and so can meditation. You know, there's great apps. There's Insight Timer, which is a great free app. So if you like guided meditation, there's there. If you just like music, you know, just listen to some relaxing music, or and then just sit still. You know, when you sit down for food, make sure you don't have any other distractions. Just
TV
whatever
on.
you're doing, just do that.
Yeah.
You know, give if you want to play with your children, just play with your children, not just hold the phone and take them to the park or whatever, you know. Be with them. So it's I think it's just giving it attention, and showing intention. You know, kids are really good at that. They, you know, you see so many times people are just constantly like this with their phone and ignoring everything and everyone. They'll go for a walk and they're like this, you know, that's, look up at the sky, look at the, you know, look at nature, like appreciate what's around you, really. Very simple things. It's, yeah, it's just been about being mindful, really. Be
And what,
mindful of everything.
and what advice would you give people when they've been in your situation, they've just found out some bad news, um, and because it's quite a personal journey, I think, what you went through,
Yeah.
quite a personal journey for everyone. But what advice would you give people when they've received some bad news like that, like options wise, and you know what you would recommend now going through that process?
Yeah. I what would I recommend? That's a good thing. I mean, after the initial shock, I think it's always good to have someone there, have someone that you know you can use as a sounding board, that are there for you, not to try and fix you. Um, you know, I always remember my husband was always, you know, Googling things and telling me, you know, he would be sending me off to a retreat somewhere, you know, having coffee enemas every single day, you know, 5 times a day. And I just said, this isn't me. You know, it's great. I really like the fact that you're doing the research, but could you just come back to me with all the research and let me make the decisions, because this is my body. So I think, you know, if you do have something that's going on, it's always good to have someone there that you trust, that are there for you, not for them, you know.
Yeah.
People have to make something about themselves. And so,
Taking back that control, like we were saying earlier, like our
yeah,
parents.
yeah,
You
you
know,
don't want to be told you've got to go and do this, you
yeah.
know. And so just have someone there that,
Mm.
you know, even if you ask them that you want someone, I want you there, but I don't want you to try and fix me. I just want you to listen to me and stuff. And I think it's quite important to maybe get a counsellor quite soon, because there's a lot of stuff that goes on in your head. You know, you worry about your mortality. You know, there are many a time, even before the oncologist said I was going to die, that you do worry that you are going to die.
Mm.
But you just have to be kind to yourself, you know, and don't look for reasons why it happened. Don't, you know, don't go down that route.
Mm.
Um, as in, don't blame yourself. You know, it isn't anything that you've eaten, it isn't anything that you've done. But yes, do look at why you may be in this position, you know, as in, are there things that you can change about your life that maybe will make a difference, you know? Are there sort of positive things, just like spending more time on your own? Stop saying yes to people, stop, you know, stop helping everybody, you know, put yourself first and just say, look, at the moment I can't do this. And yeah,
Yeah.
and just take time out and
Check
go for
in with
walks.
yourself.
Yeah, and I think it's always important to have time for yourself, you know, because you're the one that's going through this. Um, and then you know, it's taken me a long time to realize that generally I have the power within me to make decisions and to, you know, we often look for guidance and stuff, and you can go and see a counsellor, but at the end of the day, I think everyone knows they have the answers. You use the counsellor as a sort of sounding board.
Yeah.
I think deep down you know what you have to do or what you want to do, but you're too scared or something. So I think, you know, just having time alone to process thoughts is good,
Mm.
because it clears your head and it just puts things into perspective, really. And and then speaking to other people, as in like friends and stuff, I think you just get their perspective, and it's not always, you know, everyone wants to give advice and things, but I think don't look for other people's advice. Just just yeah,
Yeah.
just
Just
make it about yourself, really.
yeah, and listen to yourself. I think
Yeah,
as well what you're saying. Really listen to what you want, because you're right. Some people don't want to go through that chemo, and if that means that they're taking some control back for themselves,
yeah,
that's quite empowering in itself, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. You know, fear makes people do quite a lot of things, and doctors have trained and they know what they're doing. But you know, and I do think, God, I was so happy that I could have operations and I was in a position that I could do that. Um, but you have to know what's right for you yourself, really. If you don't want to do something, you shouldn't feel that you have to do it for everyone else, for the doctors, for your family, for whatever. You
Mm.
know, it's allowing people to make their own decisions about themselves, especially if you're a corpus mentis. You know, there's no reason why someone has to take control of your body, really.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Jazz, can I thank you very much for coming
No,
on?
pleasure,
You've been
pleasure.
really insightful, and I know that's going to help a lot of people out there because
Yeah,
of how, unfortunately, how common cancer is, and
yeah.
the options that people do have, they don't think they have,
Mm,
because they listen to, as you say, the doctors and the professionals around, but actually thinking about other options
yeah.
is very helpful, I think. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks very much, Sharon. Bye bye.